You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength of street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
And welcome back to another Warrior Creed live stream with me, the radical Majid Nawaz. And there's much to update, as you should be able to see on your screens right about now. Trump's Gaza peace plan, that is the topic for today's stream. Of course, we've been bringing you updates on this as we've been going, having just returned from Washington, D.C. ourselves. Nevertheless, the situation has developed considerably since our last update to you over the weekend via these live streams. And that is that the peace plan between President Trump and the regional players involved seems to have been agreed. They are now, as the Times is reporting, simply waiting for Hamas approval, but all other parties, including the regional players, do seem to have agreed to this peace plan, and that makes it quite a significant development. You can see here in the Times the headline: Trump gives Hamas 3 or 4 days to accept Gaza peace plan. Subheading: the president has demanded a quick response to the 20-point proposal, warning that he will let Israel go and do what they have to do if it is rejected. Though all indications are that because the backers of Hamas in the region seem to have approved this plan, because the regional approach was taken, as we've been calling a grand regional settlement, is what you're witnessing unfold before your eyes. All indications are that this peace deal will go ahead. Now, some of the details we're going to bring you are as follows, and you can follow this on your screen. What does this involve? But before we do, we're just going to play you a clip of Trump announcing that this deal appears to have been agreed himself. Here's President Trump over the weekend.
We're going to go for a little while to represent the United States at the Ryder Cup, which is very exciting. And we'll be watching that. This is Kai, by the way, in case you didn't know. How are you? And we'll be watching a little golf. I think we have maybe a deal on Gaza, very close to a deal on Gaza. How are you? Hello, Peter. And it's looking like we have a deal on Gaza. And we'll let you know. I think it's a deal that will get the hostages back. It's going to be a deal that will end the war. It's going to be a deal with, it's going to be peace. I think we have a deal. That'll be number 8, Peter. Not there. Mr. President, I'm James Comey.
And there you have it. That was Trump announcing that the deal is pretty much going to be concluded. We're now going to break down for you precisely what that grand regional settlement for peace in the Middle East involves. And via the Jerusalem Post, we have these handy slides that break down exactly by bullet point what the deal for Gaza involves. Bullet point 1, you can see at the top of your screens, Israeli withdrawal from Gaza Strip. It also involves a release of all hostages, continuing to read, an end to the war in Gaza, a new governing mechanism that does not involve Hamas, a security force from Arab and Muslim countries, Arab funding for Gaza reconstruction, Hamas weapons collection by an international force. It doesn't stop there. This, by the way, appears to be too good to be true, but we are of the view this is going to happen. We're going to have, for the first time in living memory, and the first time certainly for many, many, many years, what many people thought was not possible during our lifetimes, and that may well be a lasting peace in the Middle East involving all players in the region, what we've been calling a grand regional settlement. We are at that juncture, folks, and it is very exciting, though, of course, the peace plan isn't perfect. There are some concerns around it, but the overriding concern and the most important point at this stage is to stop the war. The rest of it, of course, we have to evaluate as to whether or not it's overall, in the big scheme of things, good news. And of course, stopping and ending the crisis in the Middle East and the war and the horrific ethnic cleansing in Gaza can only be good news. Now, continuing to read from the plan, it also involves, as you can see there, again, this is all from the Jerusalem Post. We'll be publishing all these receipts in the Radical Dispatch, the written version of this stream. But we're going to continue to read what the plan also involves further. There, Trump presented plan to leaders from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Indonesia, and Pakistan. Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim to co-announce the proposal with Trump. Tony Blair likely to oversee the Gaza Transitional Authority. This is, of course, when we said there are some concerns around it. This would be a key concern for many people, including us. We'll come to that in a moment. Qatar finally there to present plan to Hamas officials in Doha. To continue reading from the Jerusalem Post what the plan entails. Third slide for you. European diplomats express optimism. That's true. 8 Arab and Muslim countries signal support. Those 8 were the ones we just read for you. Qatar, Egypt, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Jordan, Pakistan, Indonesia, and Turkey. Those 8 countries have all signaled their backing, which does indeed make it a grand regional settlement for peace. You heard it here first, folks. And of course, now it's all unfolding as we said it would. This is a moment. Forgive us for not jumping up and down on the screen, but of course, in times like this, it's best to keep restraint, though we can assure you we are very excited to see the end of this war, and perhaps for the first time in our lifetimes, a genuine and lasting peace that resolves the Israel-Palestine and the Israel-Arab and the Israel-Muslim conflict. It could well be the case. So continuing to read it as to what that piece entails. We just read that slide there. Next slide from the Jerusalem Post. Trump pledges he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. We'll play you a video of that just in a moment. Current Jerusalem status quo to be maintained. What does that mean? Well, Jerusalem is currently split, and it's administered both by the Israelis and the Palestinian Authority. Of course, Israel claims Jerusalem as its capital. Trump recognized Israel as the capital of Jerusalem. Most embassies are between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, though, of course, the American embassy is in Jerusalem. Israel has never not said Jerusalem is its capital, so it's a hotly contested city. So the status quo of Jerusalem will remain as it stands, and that is that it's still divided between the two authorities. That will remain. Third bullet point there, Hamas amnesty offered if they disarm and leave Gaza. International Arab Security Force and Palestinian Authority to work together initially, the Palestinian Authority to assume full control after a set time frame following reforms. And the final slide for you. Netanyahu meets Trump at the White House. That's September 29th. That was yesterday. That meeting's happened. And we'll show you a clip where Netanyahu has also now endorsed the plan. Abbas, who's the Palestinian Authority president, says that the Palestinian Authority is ready to implement the peace plan. Special Envoy Witkoff expects a breakthrough in the coming days. This plan represents the first serious peace proposal in months. Indeed, it represents the first serious peace proposal since the assassination of Anwar al-Sadat in 1981, the leader of Egypt, who was killed for attempting peace with Israel. And then, of course, we had the Oslo Accords, which likewise ended in the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin by a Jewish extremist inside Israel. So every time this has been attempted, people have been killed. Is this finally the time that peace will reign? We are cautiously optimistic, and we think this is a historic moment and peace may well reign. Here is President Trump making it clear, as we said earlier, would show you a video clip of him stating he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. In fact, what we'll try and do is show it to you via a shared screen, because we think that's just quicker for everybody involved, instead of us playing clips that we've embedded in the Restream app. So hold on a second. We're going to play this for you. This is a clip, if this works. This is a clip of Trump saying he will not allow Israel to annex Gaza. And here we go.
Israel to annex the West Bank. Is that something that you
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this directly?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop now, okay?
And that was Trump making it very clear, which is part of what's made the deal possible. It is that he appears to have been behaving as an arbiter between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and generally the Arab and Muslim leaders of the region. And it's that regional approach that we've said is what makes a difference in this instance to bring an end to the not just the Gaza conflict, but the entire war around the entire Middle East, which is what the Grand Regional Settlement for Peace will entail, not just ending the Gaza conflict. This is important. It's not just ending the Gaza conflict, it's ending the entire regional war, which is in essence a proxy war between regional and global powers over the Middle East. This Gaza peace plan is part of a wider Grand Regional Settlement for Peace that will settle and calm the entire region. And Trump has said as much. On the sidelines of the UN, he met with the 8 Muslim leaders of the 8 Muslim countries we mentioned earlier, Muslim majority countries. And despite having had 32 meetings, as you can see here reported by Clash Report, Trump stated very clearly that despite all of that, his most important meeting was the meeting with the leaders of Muslim majority nations. And we named them for you. We'll name them again. That they were the leaders of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, the Kingdom of Jordan, Turkey, and Indonesia. These are the 8 that Trump mentioned that he met on the sidelines of the UN, calling it his most important meeting. Do remember that it is significant that Pakistan is the Muslim world's only nuclear power, a Sunni Muslim majority nation. And why that's relevant is because Pakistan, neighboring Iran, as it does, took an interest in stabilizing the Middle East. And what happens when you bring a nuclear power to face off a nuclear power, Israel? You end up with, in the doctrine of war, what's known as mutually assured destruction, or MAD, and nuclear deterrent plus nuclear deterrent equals peace. That's always been the case since World War II onwards. It sounds counterintuitive, but that is unfortunately the way the world works. Nuclear deterrent plus nuclear deterrent equals peace. If you remember that equation, you'll understand what's just happened in the Middle East. And we'll show you now exactly how Trump's confirmed that this is indeed a regional problem and therefore could only have been solved using the regional approach, the regional solution that we've been calling the Grand Regional Settlement for Peace. Have a listen to this.
And this is my most important meeting. I've had important meetings. I don't want to insult anybody that we met with just 32 meetings here. But this is the one that's very important to me because we're going to end something that should have probably never started.
We're going to end something, he said, that should have probably never started, and it's his most important meeting. That was the meeting you can see here between these countries, the leaders of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Egypt, the Kingdom of Jordan, Turkey, and Indonesia. That meeting happened at the sidelines of the UN. After that meeting, and it was before Trump met with Netanyahu in the White House, the head of Indonesia called for recognition of Israel to live side by side in peace, safety, and security. President Prabowo of Indonesia had this to say. Take a listen to this.
We must also recognize, we must also respect, and we must also guarantee the safety and security of Israel. Only then we can have real peace. Real peace. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Right.
Shalom.
That is quite something to observe the leader of the Muslim world's most populous Muslim majority country end his speech with shalom and insist on Israel's right to peace and security and safety in the region as well, after having met President Trump as one of the delegation of 8 Muslim majority country leaders. It really does indicate the direction of travel. It looks like what President Trump's managed to do is get all parties on board with this prior to even announcing it, so that once it's announced, it's already a done deal. And it's why we are quite optimistic about how this may transpire. And it's why we believe that this reinforces the approach we've taken in launching the Accordists, dovetailing with, by September the 15th, with the 5-year anniversary of the launch of the Abraham Accords under President Trump's first term. And as you can see on your screens now, this is the post done by the Accordists. We've just returned from Washington, D.C., announcing our US side to our launch as well. And we're going to show you a clip of that because this regional approach, which is clear by now for anyone following, is the approach that Trump's taken, in contrast to the unilateral approach by the Prime Minister of Britain, Keir Starmer, by unilaterally recognizing the state of Palestine. It's the regional approach, in contrast to that does appear to be wielding results. And it's something we've been saying for a long time. So to understand this problem, it is not a bilateral problem between Israel and Palestine, just as it's not a unilateral problem. And Keir Starmer's unilateral declaration fails in recognizing that. It's a failure in diplomacy. The regional approach adopted by President Trump is the approach that's worked. And this is something we were saying even prior to this, as our regulars will know, for a very, very long time. And here is our interview launching the Accordists in DC, making the same point. And now, what with the Gaza plan having been announced, it simply confirms that our approach in framing this as a regional problem requiring a regional solution is exactly the right approach. Have a listen to this. This is the launch of our Accordists in Washington, D.C. on GB News with as they launch their own DC branch on their new show, and that's The Late Show with Bev Turner.
This year marks the 5th anniversary of the signing of the historic Abraham Accords. Now, that was the agreements that established the relationship between Israel and several Arab states. Well, yesterday, American President Donald Trump vowed to end the war in Gaza after meeting with Arab leaders.
And we're here to see if we can get the hostages back and get the war over and get back to life in the Middle East. So this is going to be a very important meeting. We're going to get something done because it's gone on too long, and we want it to end. But we want to get those hostages back too.
Joining me now is founder of the Accordists, Majid Nawaz. You might know him at home as a legendary British broadcaster.
Too kind, Beth.
Majid, it's so great to see you in Washington.
Allow me to congratulate you on the launch of GB News
I will allow
America and your show. And it's fantastic to be here and to be part of the first week of the show in Washington.
Right, you are pretty much the person I go to if I want to know what's going on in the world, and that's no exaggeration because you are so hyper-vigilant to geopolitics, and you have been for many years. If I wonder what's going on in the world, I want to see what is actually happening. I go and find you on socials and your channels. So what are you doing now with the Accordists, and why have you been driven to take this step?
Right, well, we founded www.accordists.org on the anniversary, the 5th year anniversary of President Trump's Abraham Accords. They were signed under Trump's first term. He didn't get the credit that we feel he deserves for that because it was the first historic peace deal between Arabs and Israelis since the assassination of the Egyptian president Anwar Sadat in 1981. Relations had frozen since then, and along comes Trump in his first term and manages to pull out of the hat a historic peace deal between Arabs and Israelis. They're called the Abraham Accords. Of course, October the 7th and the terrorist attacks of October the 7th happened. The Saudis were about to join the Abraham Accords, and October the 7th scuppers all of the progress made in peace in the Middle East. And of course, the thing has been frozen since then. What the Accordists are about is that we feel it's high time to revive and consolidate on the successes of the Abraham Accords and expand those accords. And the fundamental premise the Accordists believe in and that we're based on is that this conflict is a regional conflict. It involves more than just the typical media portrayal of a bilateral conflict between the Palestinians or even between Hamas and the Israelis. This is a regional conflict, and I'm happy to unpack that, but it needs a regional approach.
So this is one of arguably the most complicated political network of allegiances and animosity across the world on the present day, and has been for decades. And so your argument is it's been so simplified, in no small part by the media, that it's Netanyahu versus Hamas with America on the periphery. So what do you want to come about now? A greater understanding, at the very least, of the situation?
Absolutely. So we commissioned a YouGov poll, which is a famous polling company in the UK, on this question as to what Britain believes about relations between Arabs and Israelis. Around 91% of the British public that expressed an opinion said they believe it's important or very important for Arabs and Israelis to have good relations. However, 87% of the British public had not heard of the Abraham Accords. So on the one hand, they want better relations, but on the other hand, they don't know of the existing vehicle to bring about those better relations. So the Accordists were founded to fill that gap, that public knowledge gap.
And so just explain to me, it is too complex to go into. This is the problem with modern media, isn't it? It's fast, everything gets very simplified. But your argument being that there will not be any peace in that region until you bring in Iran, Jordan, Saudis. Why have they not all sat around and done what you're suggesting they should do now? What is the stumbling block there?
Well, 5 years ago in Trump's first term they did, and historically, and it's a great achievement.
And he didn't get enough credit for that, did he?
Well, he didn't get any credit for it. I was on air at the time on my former show in the UK.
Channel we both used to work for.
Indeed, we shall not mention.
What very inferior news outlet.
Well, so I remember praising Trump's success in the Abraham Accords and facing a backlash from certain sectors of the public and also from the media establishment for actually recognizing this as a success. And it was then frozen especially after during the Biden presidency. But what happened was that the Emirates and Morocco and Sudan, they all signed up to the Abraham Accords to make peace with Israel. It was historic, and it involved not just a cessation of violence and hostilities, but diplomatic and economic exchanges. Now, we've got to a scenario now where unless we recognize that the problem is regional, we're in danger of repeating the same mistake over and over again, which is the definition of madness, and that is to assume it's a bilateral problem. So let me unpack that a bit. Iran, for example. Now, Iran's been funding Hamas in Gaza. Iran's been funding Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Iran's been funding the Houthis in Yemen. Now, that's just one example of how this is a regional problem involving multiple countries. In addition to Iran, you've got the Saudi Arabia element. So Saudis had their own problem with the Iranians in Yemen, where they fought a bitter civil war that actually didn't have anything to do with Israel. It was a Saudi-Iranian problem fighting a proxy war in Iran. Add a fourth element, and that is the countries that already signed up to the Abraham Accords that wanted peace with Israel, such as the Emirates, and you've got four different factions right there.
So when Keir Starmer designates another European leaders and Canada and Australia, when they designate Palestine as a state, is that helpful?
Well, not in the context. If you understand this is a regional problem, then by definition, unilateral decisions are not regional decisions, and they're a failure by definition in diplomacy. Any unilateral declaration of a recognition of a Palestinian state is outside of an existing framework. Now, what Trump's meeting in the UN now just indicated, where in fact Trump called it the most important meeting at the UN. He met with the leaders of Indonesia, Pakistan, Egypt, the UAE, Qatar, and Jordan, Indonesia. He met all of them together and he said, you guys together, we need to fix the problem in the Middle East, recognizing it's a regional problem. Now, we hope to, of course, pick up with the Accordist in chief, President Trump himself, on his success in his first term. But our aim is to fill that public perception gap and say, listen, any peace that is negotiated, if the public aren't behind it, it's going to be a very fragile peace.
What would the benefits be to the British public of peace in the Middle East?
Well, multiple. I mean, look, war causes instability, it end up affecting the economy, the uncertainty, all of that gets solved. And I think ultimately, though, of course, there's a heavy Jewish community in the UK, Muslim community. Ultimately, I think peace in the Middle East and stability in the Middle East will make for a lasting peace, will make for a much better world. A lot of the conflicts come down to some of the problems in the Middle East.
Yeah. Majid, always fascinating.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you so much. You're doing great work and wish you success here in DC.
My pleasure.
Right.
Now, since that interview was recorded, of course, that's what's unfolded. The regional peace has unfolded with all the countries we named coming on board. And Trump has made that very clear. So again, in sharing the screen with you, we're going to go now fast forward because that interview was before the deal was announced. We've been saying, of course, our regulars know this. We've been saying this for over a year, that there's going to be a grand regional settlement for peace in the Middle East. But now we're going to fast forward to what Trump announced after the peace deal. And you can see that it is, as we have been hoping and as we've been explaining, indeed, it's a regional deal. And that's why it stands a strong chance of success. Take a listen to this.
It means the immediate end to the war itself, not just Gaza. It's the war itself. Under the plan, Arab and Muslim countries have committed, and in writing in many cases, but I actually would take their word for it. The people I mentioned, I'd take their word for it, to demilitarize Gaza, and that's quickly. Decommission the military capabilities of Hamas and all other terror organizations. Do that immediately. And we're relying on the countries that I named and others to deal with Hamas. And I'm hearing that Hamas wants to get this done too, and that's a good thing. and destroy all terror infrastructure, including the tunnels, weapons of production facilities. They have a lot of production facilities that we're destroying. They'll also help train local police forces in the areas that we're discussing right now, in particular in and around Gaza, working with the new transitional authority in Gaza. All parties will agree on a timeline for Israeli forces to withdraw in phases. They'll be withdrawing in phases. No more shooting, hopefully, as progress is made toward achieving these goals. Arab and Muslim nations need to be allowed the chance to fulfill these commitments of dealing with Hamas. They have to deal with them because they were the one group that we have not dealt with. I haven't dealt with them. But the Arab countries are going to, and Muslim countries are going to be dealing with Hamas, and I believe they've already been there. I think they probably have an understanding, and they haven't maybe mentioned that, but I would imagine they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone as far as they've gone. If they're unable to do so, then Israel would have the absolute right, and actually our full backing, the U.S. full backing. Marco's here, and a lot of our leaders are here, our great Vice President, Susie Wiles, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. They've been so involved in this process. I don't think anybody else could have done it or even come close, but it's we're right there. We're right there. First time in thousands of years, I think you can probably say, if you really look into it, if you study back, if you're a scholar, you would say thousands of years. Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas. But I hope that we're going to have a deal for peace. And if Hamas rejects the deal, which is always possible, they're the only one left. Everyone else has accepted it. But I have a feeling that we're going to have a positive answer. But if not, as you know, Bibi, you'd have our full backing to do what you would have to do.
And you can see there how it's framed as a regional deal. It clearly makes sense. President Trump there stating that Hamas is the only party they didn't negotiate with because, of course, there were proxies that they were negotiating via, such as the Qatari state. And he's optimistic that Hamas will end up agreeing to the deal. Why? Because the regional players have agreed, and Hamas will end up isolated, not having its regional backers, and will end up not having any choice but to accept the deal. And so, being as optimistic as the president is, we think this will actually lead to a historic agreement. And Netanyahu yesterday met with President Trump at the White House and left the meeting also expressing his agreement to the deal. And take a listen to this.
I believe that today we're taking a critical step towards both ending the war in Gaza and setting the stage for dramatically advancing peace in the Middle East. And I think beyond the Middle East, in very important Muslim countries. I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
And that was Netanyahu also accepting the terms of the deal. It is pretty much all parties now have agreed, except for Hamas, which is expected they will agree. And our regulars will also know that we have for a while mentioned the role of Pakistan, even at the top of this stream, how a nuclear deterrent plus a nuclear deterrent equals peace. And that's what's pretty much has occurred here because of the regional approach. Pakistan, I'm going to take you back just a bit to remind you that Pakistan was the player involved when Iran and Israel were engaged in their 10-day hot war. the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan, Field Marshal Asim Munir, flew to the White House, met with President Trump in the White House. A couple of days after that meeting, Trump ended up mediating peace between Israel and Iran. The Pakistanis nominated President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. This was a good few weeks before Netanyahu did. Of course, the media picked up on Netanyahu's nomination, and the left will pick up on that as a way to bash President Trump. But it was actually the Pakistanis who first nominated President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, and Trump knows that, and it's why we suggest to you that after agreeing this deal, Trump had the following to say about Pakistan, specifically thanking Pakistan for their role in this deal. Take a listen to this.
Prime Minister and the Field Marshal of Pakistan, they were with us right from the beginning. Incredible. In fact, they just put out a statement that they fully believe in this pact. It just came out just as I was walking around. They said, sir, you have a big notice from the Prime Minister of Pakistan and from the Field Marshal that they back this 100%.
And there you have it. That's the role Pakistan played. They, of course, had a right to be involved because any hot war between Israel and Iran destabilizes the nuclear power Pakistan, which has a long border with Iran. It's next door to Iran. So the Pakistanis needed stability in the region. And being a nuclear power, it's very easy for a nuclear power to talk to another nuclear power about stability, because the alternative to stability when two nuclear powers are talking is mutually assured destruction and potentially World War III. So the significance of Pakistan being the world's only Sunni Muslim majority nation, Sunni or Shia, but it happens to be Sunni majority, but being the only Muslim majority nation on the planet that has a nuclear deterrent, that significance cannot be understated. They clearly played a role in these negotiations. Trump, there you heard him thank them. And as we mentioned, it was the Pakistanis who then first nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, which we think he'll get once this deal goes through. And for our regulars, you'll be aware, as is on your screens now, that this Grand Regional Settlement for Peace and its dynamics we've been raising for a while now. On your screens, you can see a former Radical dispatch dated the 26th of June, 2025. We're quoting from it. It's called An American Peace in the Middle East. And we wrote then in June, Pakistan was right to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump will get it and deserves it. And you can see one of our posts there. It says Sunni Muslim nuclear power Pakistan played a significant role in the Iran versus Israel de-escalation. Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir met with Trump at the White House as the hot war was ongoing and advanced nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. What came next was indeed Trump negotiating peace with Iran and Israel. So we were stating that at the time. It's now clearly been confirmed by President Trump, where he has directly thanked Pakistan for their involvement. And of course, this ends when it does end, and it will end with peace. It ends with Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize as well. And to the extent, we'd say that there's cause for optimism, that also has been reflected by Trump himself. Because remember, we've made it clear that our aim in founding the Accordists was not only to revive the Abraham Accords and consolidate on their successes, but to expand them going forward. And the president himself, the Accordist in chief, seems to think that such an optimistic note is also worth sharing. So here he is, President Trump, going so far as to saying even he thinks Iran might end up joining the Abraham Accords. It truly is an optimistic moment. And take a listen to this.
And who knows, maybe even Iran can get in there. I hope, we hope we're going to be able to get along with Iran. I think they're going to be open to it. I really believe that. But they could be a member. I long ago said, I'll bet you at some point Iran will be a member of the Accords. And little did I realize it was going to take this turn. That was some turn we did with the B-2s. But I think they might very well be there because it's a great thing for them.
There you are. You heard it yourselves. And of course, if Iran does join the Abraham Accords, that would be incredibly significant. If the Accordists have anything to do with it, then of course that's something which is our basic mission statement. It's to revive, consolidate, and expand the Abraham Accords. One of the key premises for the Accordists is this notion that you cannot have a lasting peace if there's no public mandate for that peace. Any peace that's negotiated without the public's backing is likely to remain very fragile. And so in that context, the work of the Accordists creating the bedrock for these sorts of diplomatic peace negotiations becomes seen as incredibly crucial. And so we're just going to go now to, again, just to demonstrate that we've been on this for a long time. Go back, if you remember, we were interviewed in April 2025, back in April 2025 on GB News for the Neil Oliver show. And everything you've just seen unfold, we said back in April is what was going to happen. And again, by way of reminder, just to reassure everybody that this is something that we've been intimately charting for a long time, and the Accordists, when we jump into this debate, have jumped into it with this context in mind. It's something we've been working on for a long time. And take this interview, for example, with GB News and Neil Oliver, telling the viewers back then in April 2025 exactly how this would be a regional peace plan and how it would unfold.
It's very important that Trump does start negotiations directly with Iran. And the reason that is, if I can preempt perhaps where this conversation is going, the reason why it's so important for the Americans to have bilateral conversations directly with Iran is because the conflict with Iran isn't just a conflict between Israel and Iran, it's a regional conflict between Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia and its Gulf allies over not just whether or not there should be a Palestinian state, because of course the Saudis and the Iranians agree on that element of it. Netanyahu is the obstacle there. But where the Saudis and the Iranians disagree is over things like Yemen. Now, Yemen, keep in mind, is next door to Saudi Arabia in the Arabian Peninsula. And so it's pretty crucial, a bit like Mexico is to the US, Northern Ireland is to the UK. Yemen is pretty crucial to Saudi Arabia's national security. It sits within the same peninsula as the greater, bigger country, Saudi Arabia. And of course, Iran, via the Houthi militia, has a presence in Yemen. That country's been through a terrible civil war, Saudi and Iran on either end of that proxy war in Yemen. So despite them agreeing on Palestine, Iran and Saudi Arabia disagree on Yemen, and they disagree quite viciously, not just on Yemen. Prior to that, on Syria, of course, Assad was allied with Iran and the Saudis were backing the insurgents. That situation has come to a head now, and the Iranian allied, Putin-allied regime of Assad has had to flee, and he is now in Moscow. So you can see there are areas of contention between Saudi Arabia and Iran that in some instances are equal to the areas of contention that exist between Iran and Israel. So it's a very complicated geopolitical mosaic, and that's why the bilateral talks between America and Iran are important, because if it were just an Israel-Iran dynamic, it wouldn't actually address the real problem, which is there's a wider regional struggle going on here. Of course, sectarianism, Sunni versus Shia Islamic factions, is an element, but that's insofar as because they are being exacerbated on purpose by geopolitical powers. The real problem is geostrategic. Of course, as with is always the case, people that play divide and conquer games will, they will put salt into the wounds to exacerbate existing sectarian differences, but only to achieve their political aims. So the sectarian issue is relevant, but actually what's more relevant is things like Red Sea ports, which of course the Houthis have been very, very jealous over guarding and preventing access to British and other shipping due to the Israel conflict. But Red Sea ports and other such strategic access to both ports and water supply, which is a crucial issue in the Middle East. And then on top of that, of course, land such as Gaza and on a broader level, Palestine. All of these become issues that become crucial to resolve. And I'll say lastly that the bilateral conversations have some precedent, Neil. If you remember, the US via Qatar had bilateral conversations with the Taliban in Afghanistan, leading to a similar exclusionary process for the Karzai's old Afghanistan regime that wasn't involved in those bilateral talks, and it in the end led to the collapse of Karzai's regime and to the coming to power of the Taliban. And I think these talks are headed in a direction where normalization with Iran is definitely on the table.
And of course, that was last April. And we just played for you a very optimistic clip of President Trump suggesting that Iran could well join the Abraham Accords. These are all things that happen down the line. Again, as we said in the last stream, it's important at this stage to emphasize that you will only see the diplomatic results, such as accords being signed, of all of this in the later stages. What comes first when any peace deal is negotiated are national security conversations. Usually they're behind the scenes. Eventually, once the national security sector agrees, they end up with diplomatic conversations, and then those diplomatic conversations end up becoming political conversations and treaties that end up being signed, and then the media, of course, reports on it. So don't expect all of those countries named to sign up and join the Abraham Accords tomorrow, but do rejoice in the fact that it does look like peace is on the way. And the only issue we're going to say, as we said, there is some concern or criticism about this. And the main concern is the role that Tony Blair will play in the accords, in the Gaza peace deal, because he's been appointed as the transitional, or may well be appointed as the transitional governor of Gaza for a UN authority there until the Palestinian Authority regains control of Gaza, because keep in mind, part of this is a supervised disarmament of Hamas. So Tony Blair supervising all of that is controversial. Many people have not forgotten his role in the invasion of Iraq. The Times has a piece here, you can see it on your pages there. Gaza peace plan brings Tony Blair back center stage, but carries big risks. Before Monday's announcement, Blair had been working intensively for months on a peace and reconstruction plan for Gaza, which he presented to Trump over the summer and which the president has now endorsed. It also has the backing of Gulf leaders and Israel in a move designed to isolate Hamas and provide a way forward to reconstruct Gaza. Blair's involvement, if it comes to fruition, carries risks. Significant risks. It would effectively bind him to Trump, who is highly unpredictable. We'd suggest perhaps the risks are the other way as well. But that's, of course, you can't have it all. And this Gaza peace plan is very much important that it goes through, despite the fact that there may be some concerns. Stopping the war must be the overriding concern. Of course, what's the concern with Blair? Is he not just a has-been leader of state? No, there is a genuine concern with him, not least because his fellow Labour Prime Minister, who's currently in office in the UK, Keir Starmer, has announced the decision to roll out digital ID or identity cards in the UK, and has said that in the UK, citizens will not be allowed to work unless they enroll in the digital ID system. Now, this has been Tony Blair's pet project since the days he invaded Iraq. And so it does serve as a stark reminder that just because Tony Blair's interests may coincide with peace at the moment in Gaza, they don't necessarily coincide with the interests of British citizens in the long run. And especially because the current Labour Prime Minister, his colleague Keir Starmer, seems to have adopted Tony Blair's pet project of enforcing citizen digital ID on all UK citizens. So one must remain cautious and wary and challenge Tony Blair on the domestic front, while accepting that even if he is involved on the foreign policy side, that the overall Gaza peace plan is necessary, and that shouldn't scupper our qualified support for the peace overall. That is all we've got time for on today's Warrior Creed live stream. We've, of course, mentioned our concerns around Tony Blair, but overall, we'd say that the Gaza peace plan is a good peace plan. It is something that is necessary. It is needed. It's about time. It's the regional approach. That's the approach we at the Accordists have been suggesting should be the approach for a very, very long time. And of course, we welcome this Gaza peace plan in the context of a regional settlement for peace, with the expectation that it leads to the revival of the Abraham Accords. as the framework to continue these conversations, consolidates the success of those accords, and then eventually expands those accords. And having founded the Accordists on the 15th of September, prior to these announcements being made, the Accordists stand ready to continue advocating for the Abraham Accords to serve as the regional framework to bring all of this forward. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. We encourage all of you, majidnawaz.substack.com. That's Radical Media on majidnawaz.substack.com, and sign up for the podcast version of this file, as well as the written Radical Dispatch with all the receipts we've mentioned in this stream. And of course, we encourage to become premium subscribers. Without your support, we cannot continue this work. Until next time, you've been watching Warrior Creed with me, the Radical Majid Nawaz.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.